Hey everybody, welcome into the podcast. Today is the 27th. It's Memorial Day weekend. Man, what a week. This podcast is going to be brought to you in one half part Crown Royal, one half part Dr. Pepper. It's just been one of those weeks for me. I've kind of tried to stay low key for a little while. With people in general. I mean, I like to be around people and I like to talk to people, but just recently I needed a break, and I still need a break from just interacting with a lot of people that I normally would. I know I was gonna talk a lot of NBA today and get really excited, and the guy that I want to do this podcast with is his schedule and my schedule. Just, we have a difficult time getting on the same page, but we will discuss basketball. We text about it. Really good content, I think. I just wanted to highlight though some basketball really fast. So we got the Warriors beating the Spurs. They swept them, and then the Cavs with the 4-1 series win over Boston, and it sets it up for the third year in a row of Cavs Warriors. And I love it. I cannot stand the Warriors. I don't like these fans that popped up overnight, that don't know about like Baron Davis even. I mean, that's more recent. Forget like some of the older ones, Sprewell. And it's funny to me because the argument, they always talk about LeBron's coming out of the East because the East is weak. Understandably, the East has not as much talent at the bottom. Some really awful teams, but so does the West. And honestly, I think this year was the highlight year of that. That there were teams that were good, but there really wasn't a great team except for the Warriors. The Spurs were a great team during their regular season, but what does that mean? The Warriors were a 73-win team in the regular season, and they didn't win the championship. So I think that I would say that there's one great team in each conference, and they're in the finals. And it's going to be a good finals. I think a lot of people are discounting the Cavs. They think the Cavs are going to get swept. That may very well be. I don't believe that. I think that I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful that the Cavs will win. But I could see them losing. Just because Golden State is so stacked. They have four future Hall of Famers in my mind. I think that Draymond will be a Hall of Famer. Some people kind of have him as a fringe guy, but I think that he could be Hall of Fame material. So this is the 7th straight finals that LeBron has been to. And that's pretty impressive if you ask me. You always hear about Jordan's 6 rings. He only went to 6 finals. He only played 13 years or whatever. But he didn't go every year. LeBron hasn't gone every year. But the last 7 years is pretty impressive. He's had good teams to go with. But I just wanted to run through this. I saw this online, and I just thought it was pretty interesting because of that argument. LeBron never plays anybody out of the East. So in the Eastern Conference Finals, I'm just going to run through the last 7. In 2011, he played the Bulls in the Eastern Conference Finals. That team was the best regular season defensive team in the NBA. Not only that, they had the MVP. Derrick Rose had just won the MVP. I'll debate that LeBron was the MVP of that year, but Derrick Rose won the MVP. And LeBron, they won 4-1 in the Eastern Conference Finals. In 2012, they played Boston in the ECF. That was the second best defensive team in the league. They still had Pierce. They still had Garnett. They still had Ray Allen. They still had Rondo. That team was stacked. And it took them to 7 games, but ultimately, LeBron came out on top, 4-3. 2013, 2014, it was these Pacer teams, and I remember these series. It drove me nuts because it seemed like they always fought them so tough. Well, the Pacers both years had the best defense in the league. They had Roy Hibbert on the inside, who creates problems at the rim for LeBron when he takes it in. They had Paul George, who was starting to become that all-star level player. In 2014, he was a full-blown all-star. In 2013, they were the best defensive team and the best rebounding team. I think that's always been something that you kind of have to deal with. And with the Heat, they didn't have a great rebounder inside. Between like Udonis Haslem, Chris Anderson, Birdman, Bosch wasn't rebounding that much. So they were just tough inside. David West and Roy Hibbert just banged down low, and it's a tough team to face. Ultimately, they won 4-3, and in 2014 they won 4-2. Not to mention, in 2014 the Pacers had the best record in the East. 2015, the Hawks, they had this impressive run. They won 19 straight games, and so that pushed them into that best East record. They had the best assist percentage, and they were second best in three-point percentage. Team was overmatched, and they lost 4-0. 2016, you got the Raptors. I don't personally like the Raptors. I think they're pretenders, not contenders. They had a top 5 offense. They're the 4th best three-point shooting team in the league, and they were the only team in the league that had 2 all-star guards in 2016. Isn't that kind of weird? Even Golden State didn't have one. Clay wasn't an all-star guard, and they lost 4-2 to LeBron. Then this year, Boston, oh man, Boston to me was like this upstart team, and I hated so much that they would always talk about them being the underdog, and nobody gave us a chance. I heard Isaiah Thomas going on and on about nobody gave us a chance in this series, nobody gave us a chance against Washington or Chicago. Man, they're the number 1 team in the East. They were favored in every single game until Cleveland. But that's just because Cleveland is Cleveland. I couldn't believe they got a game on Cleveland. It was embarrassing. They blew a huge lead and then lost on a three-pointer from Avery Bradley, who's not a particularly good shooter, but he had a great game. These games that they do really well, Marcus Smart was like 7 for 10 from 3. The dude can't shoot. He's not a shooter. He had a really good game. And LeBron had a bad game. He had 11 points. he just didn't do LeBron type things. And then you always hear these things like game 5? Or was it game 4? I want to say it was game 4. The LeBron got into foul trouble early on, and they went on and on about how LeBron this, LeBron that, he needs Kyrie Irving to put him on his back. Why is this an argument still? I'm tired of hearing about it. I'm tired of hearing about how LeBron needs all these people. We seem to forget that every superstar who's won rings in this league has had people around him. They've surrounded themselves with good players. Not the same way that LeBron has, but that's because LeBron came into the league in a bad situation. He went to Cleveland with nobody. You gotta figure these Magic had Kareem. Jordan didn't do so well, but then he ended up with Pippen. He ended up with Rodman. We go on and on about LeBron needing people and like trying to stack his team. Makes a lot of sense to me. If you want to win, people tend to romanticize like Jordan walking on air, not being human. I just thought this stat was really interesting. So it was the 11th game that LeBron just laid an egg. Just a really bad night. It was 4 for 13 and had 11 points. The 11th game in 93 that Jordan had, he went 3 for 18. That's 16%. That's bad. He still managed to have 22 points. He got double-digit free throws. But in the 11th game, they both just had off nights. I don't think that this is an indictment on LeBron James. I don't think that people can go on and on about how he is not clutch or whatever. He actually has a better clutch percentage in shooting than Kobe Bryant. That's pretty remarkable because people consider Kobe to be the clutch king. On the other side of the ball, you look, Steph Curry, KD, neither of them are clutch by the numbers. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. If the game gets close, who does Golden State turn to? Is it going to be Curry? Is it going to be Durant? Or is it going to be Clay? Or is it going to be Draymond? Or is it going to be Andre Iguodala? I mean, he was the Finals MVP, and LeBron was on the losing team and should have been the Finals MVP. I don't know. I hate having the LeBron-Jordan debate. Mainly for me, I just think we should appreciate what we're seeing. We're never going to see a talent like LeBron James, probably ever again, I'd be willing to say. Why do we keep comparing him? I mean, there's a fascination with being better and, is he going to pass Michael? He'll never pass Michael as far as finals appearances and win percentage because Michael is 6 for 6. He may pass him in every other aspect of his game. Every single other one except for the finals percentage. And it still won't be enough for some people. So why worry about it? For me, LeBron James is my favorite player. I love watching him. It's electric. He's an absolute freak. The guy is 6'8", 6'9", 265, 280 pounds. Fluctuates during the season, during the playoffs. That is an absolute animal of a man. Have you ever stood next to someone who's really tall? I think the tallest person I've stood next to was I got this I don't even know his relation to me. All these second cousin, third cousin, whatever. He was 16. And the dude was 6'11", and he was 16 years old. Hates basketball. Doesn't play basketball. And it always cracked me up. I was like, you're God-given. You can't teach height. You can teach everything else. You can't teach 6'11". He's enormous. And he probably weighed 170 pounds. A tall beanpole. I can't imagine standing next to LeBron James, 6'8", 6'9", just an absolute beast. Appreciate greatness while we see it. I don't think that we need to get stuck on this fascination with, is he going to pass Jordan? Is he going to be better than Jordan? LeBron still's got years on his career. We can have this debate when he's out of the league, doing whatever he's doing, coaching his son, whatever. I don't like that we always fixate on being better. Who's better? Who's got more accolades? And this extends to all aspects of life. And it's almost like life itself is a competition. And I don't think that that's very healthy for us. But at the same time, I think that we need it. I think that there's a lot going on in our society that we start coddling everybody. This whole safe space thing. Michael Rappaport, an actor, who talks about skinny genification. I think that's the greatest. I don't think that we have the same edge that we used to. Even going back evolutionary. We don't have to hunt. We don't have to have that instinct. We walk down to the grocery store and get all of our food neatly packaged right there for us. We don't have to hunt. We don't have to go out and do hard things, really. Life is pretty easy for us, and especially in America. I think it cracks me up when people want to, badmouth America. I have a lot of people that I interacted with because they're minority folks, and some of them were immigrants. And I just hated always hearing about how bad America was, or all these problems that we have in America. America's pretty great. I think that we have a kind of jaded perspective on America because we live here. We're not really used to everything else. We don't have to worry about the things that other countries have to worry about. And I think it's pretty great. But we don't really appreciate it. I guess where I'm going with this is that no matter what you do, whether it's hobbies or interactions, there's always going to be some kind of competitive nature, something that you have to compare yourself with somebody else. Two things that I really enjoy, I might go into more on other podcasts. I'm pretty brief. I love shoes and I love tattoos. Both of those groups of people, sneakerheads, tattooed individuals, some of the worst people I've ever met have been in those two groups. Just because of, it's their hobby too. And for me, I'm like, man, it would just be nice if everybody, was decent towards other people and could just enjoy everything else. For sneakers, it's a pissing contest. Honestly, all these dudes looking for the approval and adulation from other dudes, okay? I have never cared what other guys thought of what I wore. I never will. But that to me is the biggest thing. What do I have that other people don't have? What makes me different from them? What makes me better than them? I'm sorry, different does not equal better. I have a favorite shoe. It's the 11th model of the LeBron signature line. It was not a loved shoe. I mean, even LeBron, like when he wore it in games, he would change out of it sometimes because it hurt his foot. There were a lot of people that criticized it. The design, Nike's problems. I love that shoe. That's my favorite shoe. And I have a huge collection of them. I had an even bigger collection prior to selling off a whole bunch. But nobody else in the sneaker world seemed to like them like I did. There's a few people. But I'd always get these looks from people like, oh, why do you have that? And why don't you have this shoe? And why don't you collect this? And because I don't like it. The sneaker community is so based on what do other people think of what I have? What's the hype surrounding this piece of rubber and leather that's on my foot? Is it going to get me likes on Instagram? Is it going to make people think, oh, here's a dude who is just balling out of control? I guess, maybe. But I think it's so corny. Like, you have all these guys and they take a picture for Instagram and then they sell their shoe. Or they put it back in a box and they never look at it ever again. And that's fine. That's part of their culture for the shoes. That's definitely not mine. I've always been a big proponent, supporter of wearing your shoes. Okay? I'm spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars on these shoes. I better wear them. Or else it's not worth it to me. That's just my opinion on it. So when there's things like this Lonzo Ball shoe, big baller brand, and that shoe's $495, I just wonder what LeVar Ball is smoking. Because I need to get on that because it sounds amazing that you're so out of your mind that you think $495 is a solid price point for an athletic shoe that doesn't really boast any tech. We don't know what kind of tech this shoe has. It might be like Skechers. Honestly, we don't even know. We don't know if it has an air unit like Nike or some kind of boost technology. We don't know this because Adidas and Nike and Under Armour didn't touch it. They didn't want anything to do with that Ball family and LeVar Ball. And asking for $3 billion? $3 billion deal is what he wants. Get real. Get real. Your kid might be great. He may turn into an NBA superstar. But until then, why? Why would we spend that much? Thought it was great. I listened to podcasts at work. I used to listen to a lot of music at work, but it just gets so repetitive in my head that I got to break up the monotony of work with spoken word. So I was listening to the Herd podcast, Colin Cowherd and his co-host Christine Leahy, and LeVar Ball was on, and there was an incident, and he kind of went at her, and she went right back at him, and it cracked me up, because she asked, how many pairs have you sold? And he responded, stay in your lane. That's so disrespectful. That is so disrespectful, especially to a professional who's trying to interview you on a radio/television show. What's funny to me is he didn't respond to it. You know why? Because he didn't sell very many of those $495 shoes. Get this. There was like a version of it that came with a signed little card by Lonzo. It had a locking mechanism. Like, anyone's going to want to steal those ugly ass shoes. It was $995. Are you kidding me? For these nondescript ugly shoes with just what's behind it? A player who's never played in the NBA. That's like if I came out with my own shoe and was like, you know what, I think that this shoe's going to be worth $200. People would be like, put down the crack pipe, bro. And, yeah, don't ever say that again. I really hope the best for Lonzo. I'm really interested in the draft coming up because I want to see where he goes. Because it would just be the biggest middle finger if the Lakers didn't pick him. How far would he fall? Not very far, I don't think. I don't think that the Sixers would pick him at 3 because they already have a fantastic player in Ben Simmons. Would Boston take him at 1? I don't know. Oh, it'd just be awful. He goes to Sacramento or something at 5. That would be terrible. I mean, I guess Phoenix, I think, is picking 4th. They would pick him. I hope the best for him. You know, I never want to say anything negative about a person's livelihood, but his dad is so bloviatingly frustrating that you kind of are tired of him. I'm tired of hearing about him. With my sneaker addiction, I look at that shoe and $495, and I just have a hard time parting ways with it. A lot of people have called me crazy for what I spend on my shoes, but in reality, I don't spend as much as a lot of the sneaker community. I really keep it on the low. I will never tell my parents. I pray that they never find this podcast. I'll never tell them how much I've spent on shoes. Or how much I've ever spent for one pair of shoes. When you get over $1,000 for something, you must really like it. That's my opinion. If you want to spend $1,000 on video games, you better really like video games. If you want to spend $1,000, I mean, things like your car, yeah, that's like one part for some people. But for some of these things that are a smaller, everyday consumed quantity, say you really like food, if you're spending $1,000 a month on like black truffles or something, you better really like them. And that's how I was with shoes. And sometimes I look back and I have these regrets about different shoe purchases. Because I'm like, man, why did I buy those? I spent all this money on those shoes that I didn't even like, that I ended up selling. And I really should have put that money towards pairs that I need to have. It's funny because I say need. There is no need for me to have shoes. But in my head, there are pairs that I need to have them. I need to have them in my possession. And someday I will. You know, maybe it'll take 5 years, but someday I'll have some of these pairs in my possession. I really feel the same way about tattoos. I have spent so much money being tattooed. Sometimes I have to step back and realize exactly how tattooed I am. Because I forget. Which, that's ridiculous. I see myself in the mirror every day. But then, like, sometimes I'm getting ready and I turn and I'm like, oh, I forgot I have my back tattooed. I have like 4 tattoos on my back and it's not even close to being done. When I got my abdomen, my torso tattooed, that was weird for me. Because every morning I'd look down and there was ink. And I'm like, man, this is really weird. I'm completely covered. And I look at my arm, my right arm, every morning, and I just think how naked it is. I'm like, there's nothing on my right arm except for up top my bicep. I need more ink. And it's one of those things. If you're going to spend lots of money, you better really love it. And that's how I am with ink. Is I'm going to spend the money. It cracks me up when I see these people who are asking for discount ink. I have a real problem with that because it's somebody's talent and livelihood and you want them to do it cheaper or for free. And there's a strong correlation of how much you pay and what you end up with. What kind of work do you end up with? I could have lots of cheap tattoos, but people would know they were cheap tattoos. I don't think that you should ever ask for discounts. I hate when people ask me who my artist is. Shout out to Lecky. Gotta plug him. I mean, not very many people listen to the podcast, but honestly, I'm truly grateful that I found an artist that I love going to that does a good job on me. I feel so bad for the people who bounce around trying to find artists and they keep getting screwed over with these mediocre artists or people who just do really simple flash and that it's like, well, you know, if you could teach them how to pen it, then you could probably teach them how to tattoo you with it. There's not an art element to it. I mean, there is. It's art, but it's not artistic, if that makes any sense. It makes sense in my head. I'm a big fan of the way that he feels about the tattoo community because he kind of had a similar thought that I do. There's a lot of really just awful people in the community. There's a lot of negativity. And so his shop is so different. If you walk into it, it's a completely different feel than any other shop that I've ever been in. I've gone to a couple shops with friends when they've gotten tattooed. And I honestly don't really like the vibe in a lot of them. I like the vibe at the shop that I go to. For the longest time, he tattooed with Samoa ink. And it was okay. I liked the vibe at that shop. And then it got a little weird. And then he tattooed me privately for a couple of years, maybe 2 years. And now finally I moved back and he's back at this shop and he's tattooing and you know, shout out to Lecky and his business, Artsy by Nature. He's got a couple young guys in there that they throw down too. I've been blessed too that I've gone to him for all my tattoo work. 87 hours of tattoo work. That's 2 weeks? Is that 2? Am I dumb? Yeah, that's 2 weeks. That I've been under the needle with him. I had one tattoo done by this girl. I won't mention her name because there's people who think that she's good. That she did in her basement, and it's one of my life regrets. I don't have very many, and I try not to have regrets. But I got tattooed just kind of on a whim. I thought it would be awesome to do it, and it wasn't. It didn't turn out as good. I was glad it was only script, but ultimately I had to have my artist go over it and re-tattoo it. And so that's a big thing for me, is all these people that they want recommendations, they want cheap work, cheap payments, I guess, not cheap work. Everybody wants, Nico Hurtado level, Kat Von D level tattooing for $40 an hour or something like awful like that. And so the biggest thing for me with the tattoo community, I don't care if you have tattoos. Honestly, couldn't care less. I think it's a cool talking point, but I'm not like, oh yeah, we're tattooed brothers, I don't care if you don't like tattoos. That's also your opinion. Some of these people get so mad at non-tattooed folks. They're like, oh, you judge me. Quite honestly, they probably don't. And if they do, it's because of how you are coming across. They're not like, look at this tattooed guy, he's a bad person. Because I'm tattooed. I'm very tattooed. And I go into places, and I do my best to be respectful. I do my best to be a good person, honestly. And I had the craziest experiences in South Carolina with the tattoos because, one, I'm Asian, and there really aren't very many Asians out there. There was black people and white people. That's it. It was weird for me because the only Asians were the ones working at the restaurants, like the sushi restaurants. And maybe it was one guy because the rest of everybody else was black or white. There really weren't Mexicans either. It was, other Latinos that are, Islander type Latinos. I always had these people look at my ink and just, they couldn't believe it. They're like, wow, you're so tattooed. You have so much ink. And I did my best to be nice and to talk about it. And I feel like I changed some minds. I had this really, really old lady who was looking at my ink at the grocery store. And she kind of gave me this weird look like, get this heathen away from me. Like, what is he doing? He must sell drugs or be a criminal. I better be careful. And she clutched her purse to her body. It had been in the shopping cart. She straight up picked it up, clutched it close to her body. And then she was reaching. She couldn't quite reach this box that was on a shelf. I was like, ma'am, let me grab that for you. I reached over, and the look on her face, she's like, oh, this guy's actually nice. He's actually a good person, and I don't have to worry about him. And after that, it was completely different. The ice lady just completely melted. And she was friendly, and then she wanted to talk about my ink, and then she asked if I was Hawaiian because she lived in Hawaii, as a young girl with the military. I was like, see, all this could have been avoided, I guess, if we had just decided, let's be nice to everybody, no matter what. I'm pretty judgmental when it comes to tattoos. I just got done talking about it. I'm not judgmental about the fact that you have tattoos. I'm judgmental when it comes to what the content of your tattoo is and the work that it is. When I see someone with bad work, it's mostly the work more so than the content, because tattoo whatever you want on your body, but don't be surprised when you tattoo something ridiculous and then you get criticized for it. Okay? That's just, let's use your brain. Common sense. You're not going to be widely accepted if you have something ridiculously offensive on your body, in plain sight. Like, you got a dick on your arm or something. Yeah, people are going to look at you weird. What do you expect them to do? That's just awkward. It's weird. There's no need for it. But when it's bad work, for me, when I see bad work, I can only think, that person has poor judgment. For me, that's everything. As an individual, I think that you should be smart. You should do your best to educate yourself. You should be aware of everything around you. And you should make good judgment calls. I don't care that you got that tattooed, you got some weird tattoo, but the work is awful. Why? Why would you do that? I love tattoos. I love that we can express ourselves through artwork that is permanently on our skin. So why would you go and mess that up? You have so much potential, but you only have so much skin. So for me, it's a judgment thing. It's a lack of judgment. And I will judge them. I'll judge them silently. I will never tell anyone to their face about their ink, what I think of it. I'll be polite. I've had a couple run-ins like that where I've had people compare their ink to mine, and I'm like, man, you must have hit your head pretty hard. I think you should go to the hospital. Because you're obviously confused and you're obviously tripping. It's not even close. I had this girl who had a tiger tattooed on her. And it was like a 2D tiger. No, the awful shading, awful colors, awful lines, and she was so proud of it. And she compared it to my tiger, and it's the only time I have ever snapped on anybody about tattoos. And I was like, that's so disrespectful to me to even consider that our ink is in the same league. I have a tiger on my leg. I see it every day. And I would be embarrassed if I saw yours. And, obviously that didn't go over well with her. And I didn't talk to her for very much longer. But I didn't, it's sad to me. It makes me sad because it's something I love, and then you see someone butcher it. It's kind of like when I see people with just nasty shoes. I know it's not their thing, but they they jam the back down. They're slamming their foot into it. Some people's feet, man. How can they smell so bad? How can your shoes smell so bad? I've always had people, oh, man, your shoes smell brand new. I'm like, that's because my feet don't stink. I'm not a gross person. It just hurts me inside when you see people not take care of like shoes or they have poor tattoos. That's just personal, little tidbit about me. I kind of want to just change direction. I go back to it's been a week. That's about all I can say about it. What a week. I have struggled in the past with dealing with people and what they go through. But the more experiences that I have had, the more I can relate to other people. And I love that. I still want to do something like counseling or therapy. And that's because of how much it's helped me. I used to have this big stigma, I think everybody does, going to therapy, going to a counselor. I would encourage everyone to go to one. Even if you don't think you have problems that need to be addressed, it's so good to talk to someone that's their job. They're trained to understand different things about the human, brain, behaviors, everything like that. And so it's amazing to me when I go in. I've gone to counselors for like 4 or 5 years. And the first 2 I had were awful. Just totally awful. Didn't help me one bit. Essentially, it felt like things that I could have read out of a Psychology 101 textbook. And then told myself in the mirror. Hated it. In South Carolina, I went to a counselor who was incredible. I actually learned a lot about myself going there. And the craziest thing to me was going to a counselor, explaining what was going on in my life, feeling like it was so different. And then she's like, I understand where this is going because I've seen this. And it's because of this. And she would tell me something, And it would click in my head. I'd be like, that's exactly it. Oh my God. Oh my God, that is exactly it. That is exactly how I'm feeling right now. That was the first indication for me that counseling and therapy worked. And I was hooked. I wanted to talk about different things that happened. There's some things I will never go into on this podcast just because it's public. If if you're interested in some of the stuff, then we can talk, We can talk one-on-one. And honestly, that'll be subjective to who you are. But it's big for me because I didn't really buy into the whole counseling thing. And now I love it. And I'm convinced that everyone should go. When it comes to mental health, I have been at all ends of the spectrum. I think that I might be a little bipolar, but I don't really know. And I don't think I'll ever go in and find out. This is one thing that really bothers me about some of the mental health conditions, diseases that people deal with. As soon as I get this diagnosis, it's like everything goes out the window. You can be depressed for short amounts of time, and you can be sad, and you can be stressed out. Does that mean you have anxiety? Does that mean you're bipolar? Does that mean you have depression? Not necessarily. And it's almost like as soon as people find this out, then it becomes a crutch for them. Oh, my life is difficult because, oh, poor me. I have depression. I went to the doctor and I have depression. Going to the doctor for depression, in my mind, is kind of that's the last step. I think the first person you should go to for depression is a counselor, a therapist. I'm not talking a psychiatrist who can write you meds. I think meds help a lot of people. I think some people require it because it's the chemical imbalance in their brain. But I think a lot of people just need to talk it out, and they need to figure out what is the deeper cause for this depression. I know that some of the depression that I faced, it was rooted in just unsatisfactory living. I mean, how was I living? I was in a job I didn't really care for. I was in a tough relationship. And a lot of it rooted back to me. I was like, oh, well, when you put it that way. Because you do a lot of blaming, I think, initially when you sit there and like, oh, my job sucks because my boss, and that may be true. But there's only two options with every choice that is out there in the world. One, you can deal with it and try and make it better. And if you can't do that, then you can change it. That's really all there is to it. So for me, I feel like I'm a little harsh on people sometimes because I've been in these situations. And understandably, not everybody is the same mental makeup. I'd consider myself to be fairly strong mentally. At the same time, I have my weaknesses and things that I struggle with. But it's so frustrating to me when people want to be, poor me, my life is so hard. And I was there. I did that. I don't share this with a lot of people. I was there to the point that I didn't think that life was worth living. Okay? Not many people know that. Not many people know that I tried to kill myself. I want to say it was 5 years ago. Somehow, by the grace of God, or whatever it was, I'm here today. I thought life was done. It was not getting better. Things were just awful. I can't believe how much I've done in the past 5 years. I may not be where I want to be career-wise, job-wise. I have a job that pays the bills. I may not be where I want to be relationship-wise, But I've had some good times in relationships. I've met some wonderful people in the past 5 years. I met my best friend like 3 years ago, 4 years ago or something. I've met so many great people in that 5 years. I can't imagine what it would have been like if I had actually died. And the worst part about it is, earlier this year, I was right back there. And I hit rock bottom again. And this is kind of hard for me to say. I gave up on myself. And I had a lot of people that were pulling for me, and I ignored it. And it got to the point where my ex was separated from me, and she had the police come to my house. And they weren't leaving. I tried to ignore the knocks, but they got louder and louder. And I finally went out, and there were 4 cops standing there. And they went over it, and they were like, tell us what's going on. And I was trying to be so hard and so fine. And I just broke down. I was like, I don't know what to do. This is the worst that I've ever felt in my whole entire life. I've never felt like this. And I don't want to continue to go on. And the cops, they wanted to take me to the hospital. And it would have been an involuntary admittance to the hospital. And I refused. I assured them it would be fine. Which, looking back, I probably should have gone. But I was trying to be the best I could, willpower-wise, telling myself that I could get through this, even though I didn't believe that for a second. And I had great people, my parents, some of my good friends rallied behind me. And I don't ever want to be back there. I don't think I ever will be. Because of these experiences that I've had. Because of these absolutely terrible bottom of the map, very bottom, rock bottom, can't go any lower moments. These are the moments that are going to ultimately define who I am. Every action that we have in our lives defines who we are. But it's not the action. It's how we come out of that action. It's our reaction to that action. That's why I hate when people try and blame things on a disease. Oh, I have depression. I'm sad. There's a lot you can be doing to help yourself. And ultimately, that's what it takes, is for us to help ourselves. And I don't think a lot of people understand that. You have to do all that you can do. And I don't really get religious very much. And the majority of my audience doesn't. But one of the scriptures that I read, I can't even remember the verse or anything, but it said we're saved by grace. God saves us with grace after all we can do. That's the important thing, because I think a lot of people think that God is going to help us. You know, if you're a religious person, you're like, let go and let God. You see, what was that Jersey Shore dude had that tattooed? I understand that, and I believe that to a certain extent. There are things that are out of our control, out of our life's control, that we just have to let go and just hope and pray for the best. But the important part of that is that we are saved by grace after all we can do. What does that mean for me? That means you got to get off your ass. You got to work hard. And then whatever slack is remaining, that gets made up with whatever. You know, you don't have to believe in God. You can believe in whatever you want. But you have to work for what you want. Dreams without action, without hard work, are simply just dreams. They're thoughts. That's all they'll ever be. So, I try my best now. I want to be more accepting and compassionate when it comes to mental health, because everybody deals with something. Everybody goes through pain. And ultimately, the people around us help us quite a bit. I have had a couple friends in my life that I didn't really grow up with them, but in college I was good friends with them, and I just remember I hadn't heard from the one girl since college, since like 2013, so about 4 years, and she called me out of nowhere shortly after the cops left. It was probably the next day. And she said, I've been thinking about you and what's been going on. And, tough guy Sam, who she used to know, started crying on the phone. And I look back at that, I'm like, oh man, I did a lot of crying over those couple weeks. Like more crying than probably a good 4 or 5 years. And I just remember what she said to me. She is like, you're allowed to feel awful. You're allowed to feel bad. But that's not who you are. She said, take whatever time you need to feel like this. But at the end of the day, you get up out of bed, you put your pants on, and you go to work. You get to work. Not talking job-wise, but you get to work, you make yourself better, you focus on you make yourself happy. And I was like, I don't think you realize how much I needed to hear that. Because the advice that everybody gives you when you go through a hard time is, things are better, you gotta cheer up. Ultimately, you do. You have to make the decision to be happy and cheer up and change what you were doing. But you are allowed to feel bad. You are allowed to be sad. And I think it was really healing. It had a healing property. I mean, not initially, because then I got back with my ex like 2 weeks later, and then got left again, and it was just this downward spiral over the next couple months. But now, I could focus on it, and I can focus on being happy and working towards whatever goal it is. I don't really know at this point. That's the beauty of it. I don't have to know. And I just take it a day at a time. Mental health for me is the most important part of who we are, because I don't think that if we're not okay with where we're at and who we are, then it's going to make it hard to do everything else in life. How are you going to love someone else when you can't love yourself? You can't love what you're doing. That's not possible. I think it's important for us to remember that everybody goes through problems. And that doesn't mean we need to give generic answers when someone goes through a problem, or tell them that things are going to get better. You can be honest. I had people that were honest with me. They're like, man, this sucks. Your relationship sucks right now. It's done. It's over. Your life sucks right now. But guess what? Tomorrow's a new day. And I hated hearing that. I hated it so much. But it was true. And ultimately it worked for my good and who I am. We just need to be compassionate. That's what it comes down to. We're always so concerned with image, and we don't really take time to love our fellow man, people around us. We don't take time to be compassionate towards their situation. Everybody goes through hardships. Everybody looks at things differently. What might be hard for you isn't hard for somebody else. I've always thought that, because I'm not good at the whole emotion thing in relationships. Some people are great at it. For me, some of the addiction things have been so hard. And I know people that have never been tempted with it. They're not even interested in it. And I'm like, man, this is difficult. This is really hard. We all have different struggles, but we are all people, and we can all appreciate everybody else's struggle. And I think sharing it with other people really helps. It's nice to know when people who are your heroes let you know that they went through hard times too. That's why I'm always been grateful. I have a couple friends that I really look up to, and who have shared like difficult times with me and like the struggle that they've gone through. And I'm like, man, there's hope after all, because look at them. They went through all this, and they're doing much better. So why can't I? There's no reason. I'm glad that I like have the like an introspective personality, I guess, and I can like see areas that I have inside of me that are serious flaws, but also that I can see like the good in myself. And I think that's important too. I think a lot of times we're so down on ourselves and so negative, and there's a lot of good about us that we don't really see. And so it's kind of nice. My challenge, I guess, would be text some people on your contact list, hit them up on Facebook, call them, and just let them know like why you appreciate them, things that they do well. Out of nowhere, it feels pretty good, honestly. You tell yourself that you're a decent person and stuff, but like then when someone else tells you like that they appreciate you or that they think that you're pretty great, that does wonders, honestly. So I would challenge you, reach out to somebody and just tell them, be like, look, I've been thinking about you, and you do this really well, and you work hard. I really want to have guests on the podcast. It's just been crazy with the scheduling, and I'm hoping it settles down. I have a couple people that I want to have on the podcast. I think that it'll be a really great conversation. The sports one, honestly, like that's going to be such a niche podcast, because I know there's a lot of people who do listen to the podcast that are like, I do not care about sports one bit. You know, you put the football and the basketball and score 2 touchdown points or something. I understand that you're not going to be interested in that, but it should be a really good conversation. And I'm really excited. I've really enjoyed doing the podcasts, and I've enjoyed that people have given me feedback. I've had some people listen that I didn't think were going to listen. And I've had a couple people from like my way back past that have listened, and they're like, who is this guy? You know, it's a completely different person than we remember. And so I'm like, wow, yes. Plus 1 point for personal growth. I'm going to wrap it up a little bit early, I guess. It's about an hour. But hopefully I will be able to do a midweek podcast. I'm always getting excited about midweek podcasts. I think the sports one, whenever I find time with my buddy Eric, we will record when we have time. It's not going to be, Saturday morning. I'm just going to throw it up there. You can listen to it, or you can just tune into the regular Saturday podcast. I hope everybody has a great Memorial Day weekend. Be safe. If you're, traveling, if you're barbecuing, throw me an invite, And I appreciate you guys. Thanks.